Hello, comrades, and welcome back to Ushanka Show. Stories about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. So today, boys and girls, we're gonna talk about capitalism. Surprisingly, the Russian word for capitalism is capitalism. Capitalism. And the reason I want to talk to you about capitalism because I'm kind of like have a unique experience. I lived for 20 years of my life in socialism and about 20 years of my life in capitalism. So let's begin with official definition of capitalism. It's an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. And just for the quick comparison, what is socialism? Socialism is when the workers or proletariat controlling means of production either through cooperative enterprises or by public ownership. This is extremely important to understand because so many people call Democratic Party and Democrats socialists, but until Biden or whoever else will be the leader of Democratic Party will begin calling for workers controlling means of production, be calling for government taking ownership of means of production, Democrats are not socialists. Calling Democrats socialists is like calling a guy who wears tight pants and pink t-shirt gay. Just because he likes tight pants and pink t-shirts, it doesn't make him gay. Just because Democrats talking about social programs, it doesn't make them socialists. But this is the topic for a different video. I'm gonna make a video specifically about socialism. Today we want to talk about capitalism, and we'll talk about why capitalism is like such a natural thing, why so many people like capitalism, and at the same time why so many people hate it. My own experience with capitalism, I think it actually started with Sky Mall. Yes, you heard that right. I kind of understood capitalism when I saw Sky Mall magazine on one of my first flights in America back in 1990s. For those lucky ones who have no idea what is Sky Mall magazine, it is actually a magazine that is being distributed in the airplane seat pockets, and at some point about 20 million copies were distributed that way. It was founded in 1990. As I said, I first saw it in 1995 when I was flying from New York to Chicago on my very first trip to the Camp Rosenthal. I was shocked to see how much totally stupid and useless crap was for sale in this magazine. I especially recall this laser guide, like almost like it looks like a laser for a gun, but it was a laser for the cue stick to play pool, so you can aim better while you're playing pool, and I thought it was so ridiculous. But at the same time, what I really liked was so-called motivational posters. Of course, you probably know there's also demotivational posters now that's making fun of those, but the ones about teamwork and leadership, I really like those. I liked reading the messages. They were quite inspiring. But the message on one of those posters really took my breath away. Later I found out that was written by Christopher McDougall, and it's called Born to Run. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must outrun the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the slowest gazelle or it will starve. It doesn't matter whether you're the lion or the gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. I didn't know that you could just take that magazine with you, so I actually copied that message in my phone book. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember, we had записные книжки, so there's like a little notebook that you have of your friends' phone numbers, and I had that one back in the day. We're talking 1995, so I actually carefully copied that message because I was so impressed with that it doesn't matter if you're a lion or gazelle, when the sun comes up, you would better be running. And I think it's way better explanation what capitalism is instead of economic system based on the private ownership. I think it's when sun comes up, it doesn't matter if you're lion or gazelle, you better be running. So this is why capitalism feels so natural, because it's a natural selection. It's survival of the fittest. So the fittest gazelles will survive, the fittest lions will survive. Everything else will perish. And this survival of the fittest is pretty much what evolution is, right? In the animal world, over the millions of years, only the most adaptive, the most successful species survived. And I find it kind of hilarious that a lot of people that don't believe in evolution, they believe in capitalism. So they think it works just great for humans, but in nature it doesn't exist. But if you look at the capitalist society and if you look at the nature, you can see a lot of parallels, because what the natural selection does, what the survival of the fittest does, it creates apex predators, right? So in any environment, there'll be some apex predator, like lions in Africa, right? The strongest predator. You have orcas, killer whales, you got sharks. And if you look at any segment of animals, insects and mammals, every continent, every area will have some kind of apex predator. And similarly, in capitalism, if you let it run its course without any influence of the government, any laws, or whatever, you're gonna create monopolies, right? That's your apex predator. So any industry, and we can talk about Standard Oil, right? Any industry will eventually have one company that will dominate the market. You'll have your apex predator, you'll have your lion of oil industry or internet or whatsoever. And also, if you look at the animals world, there's a lot of behavior that reminds me, for example, labor unions. Like a pack of wolves, they're not apex like predator on its own, but because they got together like a labor union, they actually can be quite competitive and they can defend themselves from larger predators like bears or whatever. Similarly, like buffaloes in Africa, right? African buffaloes, they also live in a herd. So this is like a labor union. It helps them to survive better, helps them to protect themselves from the apex predator. And back into apex predator. So that's the main issue with capitalism. It creates monopolies, right? You're going to have a winner, going to take it all. And that's that point when capitalism stops working, because if you have a monopoly, there's no more competition, right? A company can charge any price because there's no one else makes a similar product. And here we, of course, talking about government stepping in. And like in the United States, we don't have real capitalism because there is so many limitations. There's anti-monopoly laws and stuff like that. So we don't have a natural capitalism because it's what it does. It creates monopolies. And this way it kills competition. So if you look at any segment of American economy, like soft drinks, right? Coca-Cola and Pepsi and some distant third competitor. And I bet you if there'll be no anti-monopoly laws in the United States, Pepsi and Coca-Cola would join together. There'll be like Standard Oil. There'll be a standard beverage company that makes all the drinks in the United States. I used to work a little bit in the carpet industry, that wall-to-wall carpet. And once again, back in the 70s, early 80s, when the wall-to-wall rugs became super popular down in Dalton, Georgia, there was, I can't say hundreds, but a lot of companies making carpet. But over the years, it became, once again, two major players, Mohawk Industries and Shaw Industries, and a distant third competitor, Blue, that's a weird name. So like every industry that's kind of like matured, you always have like two major competitors and maybe a third, a distant guy. Look at the car industries. You got General Motors, Ford, and a Chrysler. I mean, now we got foreign companies, but like every industry, the same movie over and over again. There's a plethora of manufacturers when the new market opens up, and then over the years, they saturate the market, then begins survival of the fittest. Then there'll be a couple of guys that will buy other guys, or they just run them out of the business, and at the end you have just 2 or 3 companies, and they would like to merge, but they can't because of the laws. And when we talk about capitalism, it's always this conversation about competition. That's what makes everything great. But in fact, if anyone was in business, like I worked for my in-laws for quite a long time, as I said, in installing flooring, carpet, one of them was, and then selling furniture. And actually, every business owner hates competition because it squeezes your margins, it hurts your profit. Yes, it works great for a consumer, but it's a pain in the butt for the company, for the actual guy who owns private means of production, because it squeezes your margins and hurts your profits. The ideal situation is there is no competition and you can charge any money you want. Another interesting situation with power production, so like power plants that make electricity. The trick there that you can't really compete in those markets because you need to produce exactly amount of electricity needed at that moment. You can't make it like too much. You can make too many cars and put them in a storage or do sale on cars. You can't do that with electricity. So most markets in United States for power production, they actually regulated, except a couple of states. And that disaster that happened in Texas, if you remember, like a couple winters ago, when there was the major issue, everything got shut down. That was a fine example how capitalism actually can hurt people, because chasing profit, those power plants, they were cutting cost on not protecting their equipment from unusual weather situations. So when it was unusual cold snap, a bunch of power plants had to shut down because the sensing lines froze, or they couldn't manufacture power, and then of course there was a major disaster. In Texas, it's unregulated market. It's pretty much, they didn't have any like penalties for if the plant trips and quit making electricity. So people like, okay, you do your calculations, I make power, I make money, and I need to make the cheapest way possible. So it's kind of like if you run marathon, you don't want to wear or take with you winter jacket and winter boots, right? You just have a minimal clothing on you, the lightest shoes. And remember, there was a tragedy in China when the people were running like this ultra marathon through mountains, and it was a unexpected cold weather, and quite a few runners died because it was too cold and they weren't prepared for cold weather. This is what happened in Texas. All those runners, all those Texas power plants, they didn't spend money to have their equipment protected from cold weather, like heat trace and other stuff. So they tripped when they couldn't operate anymore because the temperatures were too low. And then people died, and houses got the pipes burst, and people were freezing for quite a long time. So, this is always this fine balance between what profits are and what the service is. Recently, one of my viewers asked if I read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and I did. It actually took me forever to finish this book. I think I read it for almost a year. I'll read for a little bit, then I have to take a break because it's not an easy read. And I like that book a lot. That speech by, I can't remember the name now. It's not Alfonso, but it sounded like a Spanish name, about money. I think it's the best explanation what functions of money is. But what I found kind of not annoying, but a little bit naive, is her presentation of this kind of like idealism of capitalism. She said something that it was about these people that own train lines, and he said, I'm more than happy to run you out of business, like competing, like have a fair competition, but I hate when the government gets involved and kills your business to help my business. It's like, yeah, whatever. If there is a profit on the line, and if it's between you and me, and one of us will survive, one will perish, any business owner, they will take any help to kill competition. So this claim like, I will be competing with you in a fair situation, but I feel so bad that government, helping me, by her and you, I found it extremely naive. But generally, I like book a lot, and I said that that speech about money, I found it really inspiring and very, very good. And back to the survival of the fittest and natural selection, I kind of like watching, like many other people, these videos from Africa, from safaris, when you see lions and other predators chasing animals and catching them, like zebras and crocodiles get in the wildebeests. And it's kind of like this, your natural selection live, but then a lot of times it really hurts to watch it because they go after the weakest, first of all, right? So they go after like these little baby animals that just got born, and it just hurts me to watch how mother has to abandon baby calf because there's a pack of lions attacks or even pack of hyenas. And this is what's kind of like what's wrong with the pure capitalism, right? Sure, you better be running in the morning, but what about if you were born handicapped? Or what about if you broke your leg? There's a lot of situations like you don't deserve to die or fall behind just because you have this temporary disability or permanent disability. So this is kind of this problem with survival of the fittest, that a lot of people can get hurt if you play this pure game of capitalism. But despite all these shortcomings of capitalism, it works way, way better than socialist planned economy. You can take my word for it. I lived for 20 years in the USSR, and that stuff just does not work. Government can apply a lot of money and efforts and make something very successful. If you think about a space race between the United States and Soviet Union, and on both sides, this is planned economy. There's not a single private company until recently, Elon Musk and his SpaceX would wager like billions of dollars to send a man to the moon. Like, okay, they're not gonna make any money, we're not gonna make any profit, why would we bother? So like space race, that's on both sides was a planned economy. There was just pure government investment in space exploration, military. There's a lot of these amazing achievements were done by humankind with the governments behind it, right? But like everyday life, food supplies, cars, that's when capitalism does its magic. You don't need to force people at the point of the gun to work harder. They just do, because when sun comes up, you better be running because you need to pay your bills, you need to pay your mortgage, you need to pay education, and so on and so forth. And of course, with some people, you can argue till the cows come home and what is actually better, to be in debt and pay your mortgage for 30 years to have your own house or apartment, or wait for 20 years to get a cheap rent like it was in Soviet Union. If you remember, I made a video about it. My family had a choice, or wait for 20 years because that's how long it would take at my father's work to get an apartment, or to get in debt and get Soviet mortgage and buy the so-called Kooperativная квартира, cooperative apartment, which was like 15,000 rubles, huge amount of money for my family that was making about 300 rubles a month. So, what is better, to have a mortgage in the United States and, for 30 years, or wait for 20 years and you still need to find some kind of apartment to live because it was illegal to be homeless. So, like my family, we had a little tiny one-room apartment. So picture 3 people living there for 20 years. What about if I want to get married? Would I bring my new wife into that one-room apartment? There's a lot of this kind of things, like what is the price of your time? Like hours and that I spent in line in Ukraine in the village to buy bread, 9 years waiting to buy a car. What is the price would you put on your time wasted for buying things just because there's in such a short supply? And I'm thinking about making similar video about socialism, but I just thought I'll share these thoughts about capitalism and natural selection and survival of the fittest with you guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like this video. Post your comment and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Hey, by the way, cool merch for cool comrades is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet